camera start?
Yep.
Good, okay. Call to order. This is the meeting, May 22nd, 2020, Bedford Economic Development Authority. Let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sisonek.
Here.
Mr. Turner.
Here.
Mr. Butcham.
Here.
Mr. Owen.
Here.
Mrs. Welch.
Here.
Thank you.
And
Mr. Holdren.
Courtney, they're calling roll.
Here. Oh, here.
Sorry. If you
Thank
guys
you.
can't hear us at any time on the phone, please let us know. I know it's going to be hard for you.
It could be a little louder if possible.
So everyone be mindful of that too, says you're being audio
Okay.
recorded and filmed. And
We'll give it a shot here. Glad you can make it, Courtney. I'd like to start off welcoming Janae Welsh, our brand new member. And she's the owner of Something Else Boutique on Bridge Street. My wife's been there a few times, but I haven't yet been there. So thanks a lot for volunteering.
absolutely.
We got two big things, major things we got to get done today, and approve the phase one applications, and then talk about the phase two and get that started. Before we do that, I want to say we do have a quorum, and I'd like to entertain a motion once has anybody looked at the minutes from the last, I guess, two meetings? Don't we have two? Anybody would like to make a motion after looking those over? Appreciate it. Or have comments?
I'll make a motion to approve both minutes as written.
All right, those would be minutes of 4:10:20 and 4:24:20. Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 That's a
Aye.
Thanks, Courtney. Okay, anybody have any remarks? I've already made my remarks.
I'd like to put on my Keep Bedford Beautiful hat, if I could. I know this isn't directly to economic development, but I've said this before, that I think that the way that we look, the way that we present ourselves says a lot about ourselves. And I appreciate whoever cleaned the bank off on the railroad tracks and cleaned up that area in that parking lot. That's a major help. But if you come across the bridge, there are two garden spots right there at that parking lot, that there are weeds that are growing up like this. So you come across the bridge into town, it doesn't present a very good image, I don't think. But anyway, we could sort of look at that and tidy those up a little bit. Economic development, this member of the Economic Development Authority would appreciate it. There are others around. If you just go around and look, it's just right outside your building here, there's something growing up that doesn't look like it should be. So that's what I had to do in my building when I was a business owner, is I walked around it every day and picked up trash and pulled weeds and did all that stuff. So anyway, that's all I have.
Anybody else? Okay. We did get our reports from town staff. I guess we'll start with Bart.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher, members of the authority. I'll be brief. Just want to give you an update on the procedural status related to the middle school project. Waukesha has requested a change to their zoning permit related to that development. And you are probably aware it's essentially a change in scope that will result in the auditorium use being removed from the project and additional apartments being constructed, if approved by the Planning Commission and Town Council. If that action is approved at the public hearings, which are scheduled for June 4th and June 9th respectively, the authority would have to entertain some changes to the existing agreements with Waukesha, since it's a party to that agreement along with Town Council. And again, just keep your eyes peeled on that zoning process, because then we'll probably be bringing something to you for action as well. Also, I want to report that I spoke with Mr. McCormick yesterday, and he is going to commence cleanup efforts, in his words, immediately. It might take him a couple of weeks to mobilize, but hopefully we'll be seeing physical activity on that site very, very soon. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have of me about that or any other matters.
What zoning, I mean, it's already zoned for occupancy, I guess. I mean, what kind of changes, just more? A higher
This is
volume or
a procedural requirement. The zoning permit was a conditional use permit that went along with the rezoning, and it's specifically tied to what he presented with the original agreement. So any change requires a different agreement. That's a bureaucratic response, but that is the response.
Understand.
And that's all I have, but I'll defer my time to my colleagues at this point.
Okay, Sonia?
Good afternoon, members of the authority. You have before you two documents that I passed out before the meeting. The first document is your cash account document. You currently have $817,558.50 in that account. You're earning an interest rate of 1.14. Unfortunately, the interest rates have dropped, so you're not earning as much money because of the COVID event. Of those funds, you still have a restricted amount of $237,150 that can be given to Waukesha as soon as invoices are presented. So your total available funds currently are $580,408.50. The second document I passed out is your year-to-date expenses. Currently, year-to-date, you have expended $82,166.98. The report that I gave you lists out a detail of what those expenses are, so you can look through that, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to entertain those. You can ask me now, ask me after the meeting, or send me an email and ask me as well. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Excellent. Mary? Gotcha.
None for me, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You said you didn't have anything?
None for me, thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, I just got choked. I don't have the virus. Ted, you have anything you want to discuss?
No, I don't have it at hand. As I told Courtney, I'm just glad it stopped raining. I don't know how much flooding, whether there was any flooding in the town, but a lot of flooding on the cow pasture road up in Bath County, and I think in Roanoke there was a lot.
Yeah, our cabin over on Craig's Creek got wet, so, which is sister to the cow pasture. So. Okay, we'll move on. I think we're going to start talking about the phase 1 applications, and eventually we're going to approve them. We're going to approve them after we come out of closed session, but we're going to go into closed session because there's a potential to talk about sensitive items for each company relative to revenue and that type of thing, and that's not something for the public record. Also, Janae, our newest member, is one applicant, and so she's going to be invited to stay, obviously, but not to really have any input, or certainly not to vote, just abstain, I guess. So, with that said, we're going to go into closed session. And I'm going to read the...
I think you purposes. One is And now you're out of close. Somebody make a motion pursuant to section 2.2, 3712 in the Code of Virginia, that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered.
Anyone make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're out of closed session.
Do you need a roll call on that?
Do we need a roll call? Let's do a
Yeah,
roll call.
I'm sorry, I need a roll call on the 3712.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Of those members present, Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Mr. Buttram,
Aye.
Mr. Owen,
Aye.
Mrs. Welch,
Aye.
Mr. Holdren.
Courtney?
Yes, aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are out of closed session, and what I want to do now, we have discussed the applications. I would like to entertain a motion to approve certain applicants. So anybody want to make that motion?
All right, I'll make it. Just have to read all these. All right, I move that we approve the applications for the following business entities: Acute Design, Azul, Beals, Bedford Laser Engraving, Bell Treasures, Bella Italia, Blue Lady, Bridge Street Cafe, BVA Mercantile, Clam Diggers, Corner Stop Vape Shop, Depot Street Cafe, Dirt Road Treasures, Double Dragon, Fisher's Restaurant, Forks Restaurant, Goose Creek, Needful Things, Nested Magpie, Old Liberty Station, People's Furniture, Rapid Printing, Sister to Sister, Social Club, Something Else Boutique, Town Kitchen, Tribute Center, and West Side Market, with one condition that People's Furniture provide some additional information, just verifying the 25% drop in sales. And along with that motion, that we deny the application submitted by Blackwater Creek Catering, as they failed to submit any business license or proof of loss.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, John, no, 1 second. Let's have a roll call on this one, just to make sure.
Mr. Simpson,
Aye.
Mr. Turner,
Aye.
Mr. Buttram,
Aye.
Mr. Owen,
Aye.
Mrs. Welch. Abstain from one.
Abstains.
Mr. Holdren,
Aye.
thank you.
Okay, very good. So now we're going to talk about the Phase 2 recommendations and the changes. And I'll go through this, and then we'll have discussion as I go through it, like we did last time. There are some changes compared to Phase 1, and I don't think, well, let's just go through them. The purpose is to support the small business community that has been significantly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. They have deleted the criteria that you be a retail or a restaurant. This is open to all sectors other than retail and restaurants. The funding is still at $150,000 to help the owners of locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar businesses. Grant is still at $5,000 as it was in Phase 1. Criteria are similar but somewhat different. The length of time in business is the same, should still be in business for 6 months before March 1st, 2020. The impact, instead of a 25% loss, is now a 50% loss in sales. And I think The reasoning for that, if I remember correctly from the town council meeting that I watched, was some restaurants and retail businesses were obviously impacted greatly because of they were shut down. Some of the service sector hasn't been. So they're trying to target this more to the service sector that has really been hurt, such as the salon type business, the ones that don't sell things, but they still were shut down. So 50%, any comment on that? Okay.
I think it's a little strict, but, I mean, we had 25% before. We're eliminating now in phase 2 some of the businesses that could have applied in phase 1 that maybe failed to do it. I don't quite understand that 50%. That's pretty drastic when you're looking at small businesses. There's a lot of small businesses out. We have more than 29 that applied so far. There may be others. You know, I can't change it, but I'm not happy with it.
One question I have is, people who applied for phase 1, if they qualify, can apply again for phase 2? Because I didn't see anything that.
As far as ones that weren't eligible but did put in an application?
No, let's
Or-
say Azul.
Uh-huh.
They applied for phase 1, and it was accepted. They're going to receive the grant for phase 1. If they can show 50%, they also get to apply for phase 2 to get another.
Is there a restaurant?
I would-
Restaurants are prohibited. Restaurants, right?
Well,
We don't say that they're accepted, so you could put something in there that either accepts those who have already received them in phase 1, that they are not eligible to apply in phase 2. You can make that a stipulation.
is that a change that town council would have to make? Or?
The restaurants are prohibited anyway.
It's
No,
just
that-
excluded. I mean, this is now, since they had their chance, they were given the first chance at this. So it was presumed that they would not be applying again. I don't know of anyone who thinks that they are able to apply for a second grant. You can exclude retail and restaurants that received funding in the first one, or exclude them altogether, whether or not they took advantage of an application.
It was exclusive to restaurants.
It was exclusive to
last
retail and
time, that's
restaurant,
gone.
right.
So they didn't,
But
well, the intent at the meeting was to not have restaurants come back at this, on phase 2.
Yeah, that was not even contemplated that anybody would be coming back.
Right.
a restaurant that didn't apply last time could apply this time.
I'm not aware of any that did not apply. I believe all restaurants that were locally owned were made application. Could be one I missed, but
There is a stipulation down low that there will only be one grant to one, for one owner,
On business.
one business. So if you already got it, I think you could use that as a stipulation, maybe that.
and again, you could make another criteria that those who receive grants in phase one are not eligible for phase two.
Well, I don't know that we could change
Concerns?
that. I think, my concern was if a restaurant that received it in phase one applies in phase two and can show 50% decrease, where do we point here to say you don't qualify? Maybe it's the language that you just read. We just say, well, it's the one grant language.
It's the one grant.
The intent was it can't double dip.
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to be able to show where, because this is going to be,
And this is gonna be a bigger pool.
yeah. So, I think,
We can add anything to it, I'd prefer not to for time purposes, but Dave, if you think we're covered under that.
I don't know, because it says, and I don't mean to be
No.
the person that brings this stuff up.
No, that's a
but,
great question.
It just,
Great question.
if we have to go back to somebody and deny them, it says if the owner has more than one business, well, that doesn't apply because they're just applying for the same business. Only one is, you only get, they may only apply for one business. If there's more than one owner, only be one grant to that business. That doesn't apply.
Yeah, I think this is yours to make modification to for clarification, and, because you're the one administering this grant, so I don't know that that's a substantive change to what council intended,
Okay.
so.
Well, I guess we could just interpret it, state that our understanding and interpretation is that language right there was intended to limit phase two to businesses that did not receive a grant in phase one.
Because they did have the chance first
Yes.
to do that.
I know we won't approve them, but we gotta make sure we feel like we can say.
You have to have a basis for it
Right, yeah, I know.
in the document, I think.
So, I guess you could read that as intent. Because I know the intent was, and it should have been worded, I guess, all businesses other than restaurants and retail for phase two, instead of just marking out restaurants and retail.
And I think you can, and that's just the simplest way to show the change, that it would no longer apply to those. So that has, for someone to apply for this one, has to have the context of the first one. So maybe we do need to clarify that this was indeed, does not. But I think the concern again was, they didn't want to be exclusionary, and so in putting that in writing, it was exclusionary. I'm just, my sense of it, that's not what they said, but I think there's room for you to clarify, if you like.
Because you said you don't think there are any restaurants or retail that didn't apply the first. So we
Pretty sure
deny-
about restaurants, I don't want to speak for retailers, but I'm fairly certain that all restaurants who were eligible did.
So we could just exclude restaurants and retail.
Instead of changing eligibility, could you just put it on the application, that when they're signing it? You know, that, okay, you're agreeing that you didn't get anything in phase one, you didn't apply in phase one, just put on the application, instead of us making the changes and they can't sign if they, you know, just make a note on the application, instead of changing the whole criteria.
Dave, I really, and I just think, it was a lot of discussion, you had the minutes,
Yeah, no, I don't doubt what the intent, yeah.
but I think we wanted.
I just want everybody.
First phase, retail and restaurants, the next phase is, I guess you call it the professional folks.
Yeah.
Barber shops, salons,
Service.
gyms.
Oh, I get it, and I'm not contesting, I get it, Steve. I just want to make sure we do it the right way.
The way we did, and we added that only one owner, well, only owners and only one, because we want a big pool of these. We'll spread
Yeah.
it around pretty good.
Well,
I think it needs to respond to what Jeanette was saying, it's, you know, whoever looks at this document and writes the news reports, they're not gonna look at the application, they're gonna look at this and say, you know, so. Although that would be effective, I think I'd be afraid of not having, if we need those words, it need to be.
well, we can do both. I mean, my thought is maybe, I mean, we need to go through the rest of this, but if we
Yeah,
get through it,
let's
we
go
want
through
to
the rest.
approve it, that we approve it. That we approve it based on our understanding that town council's removal in the red line version of retail and restaurants is to be interpreted as those are not permitted, and then we also add that language to it. Ted, do you have any comment on that or thought? Does that sound like a reasonable way to approach it?
David,
Yes.
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, sorry.
So a retail establishment that didn't apply in the first round is prohibited, is now excluded.
If you're a restaurant or a retail, right.
They're a retail establishment and they're excluded. For some reason, they missed it, they didn't understand it, they didn't get their application in, and they're done.
They're done.
That's my understanding, yeah, that first round, they had first dibs on the first round of funding was specifically for the brick and mortar retail and restaurant.
Do we make that explicit in our communications, in the paper and other?
Press release went out that was based on the
Did it
application
say, did
program.
it specifically say that this is your only chance for retail establishments?
Well, I think the
They
key,
are only,
yeah, I appreciate your position on that, but I think the key is it didn't, we were very careful when we talked last time not to put out anything or mention any promises about phase two. So I think
well, I realize
implicitly, I remember making the comment at the last meeting that we shouldn't say anything about a potential phase two because it hasn't been voted on, it hasn't been approved, and we didn't. So I think that implicitly states that this is your chance. Had we said there's going to be a phase two, then I think that would have been a different scenario as far as,
I think that we had discussion that that would be a real possibility if we
We
still
did.
had money available.
we did, we had the discussion for
I
sure.
don't think there was any secret that there could have been a phase two. I know the council's running this thing, but again, there are two things of this new, that I'm real have heartburn over. That's, one is the 50% and one is the excluding retail. And the other one is, I have another one about only the owner of the brick and mortar business. I don't know exactly what that means. Does that mean that you have to own the building before you can apply? So just if they're in a brick and mortar building, then, okay.
They must own the business, and this was in response to those who work under someone who owns the business, the person who's incurring the cost. Remember, you're trying to keep brick and mortar businesses open.
Right.
Who owns the brick and mortar? Not physically, they don't have to own the building.
Right.
Who's paying the bill and carrying the debt load on that for utilities, everything you're trying to give them back in reimbursement?
Yeah.
If that helps frame the owner conversation better.
I understand.
Well, I mean, you have funding $150,000 to help the owners of locally owned, non-franchise, for-profit brick and mortar businesses. If you're just putting that out there, it's not saying it's excluding restaurant and retail. I think it needed to be a little more clear about who we're targeting, professional, whatever.
Well, I think based on what I heard those guys say, we need to maybe be more on who we're not targeting. And then, because I think one of the council members did not want to get into picking certain parts of the service sector, like excluding lawyers or, something like that. So.
Nobody would care if you did
Only the lawyers.
Just saying, I've never heard anybody fight for lawyers.
So if we added anything on here, it would be to, if either we leave it like it is, and we could have restaurants coming in and retail coming in because they're not excluded.
Well, let me
Which
ask
is
this
not the
question.
intent, which is not the intent, I don't think, of town council, but it's not prohibited here in this document.
Who's even
As
left to
written.
apply?
If we, this document, to Kevin's point, if under the purpose, we modify this document to say, to support the small business community that has been significantly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic, other than retail and restaurant, is that something that has to go back to town council, or can we just say we're doing that based on, okay?
Right.
Because that would clarify.
That certainly was their intent. I'm gonna go back and read the minutes, and
Okay.
I think you can repeat that, so.
And all the discussion,
Yeah.
because I mean, I got into essential and non-essential.
Yeah. So I think that's a change that we're gonna require.
And we can even say, other than restaurant and retail, which were included in phase one.
Right, right. And then you can add that to the application as well and make it even more clear. Okay, eligible businesses must be located in the town of Bedford. Only the owner, or I'm gonna go ahead and say it again, only the owner of the brick and mortar business may apply. If an owner has more than one business, they may only apply for one business. If there is more than one owner of any business, there will only be one grant to that business. I think that's agreeable, I think. Small business will be defined as 10 or fewer employees, whether full-time or part-time equivalents. Part-time is typically, one part-time is one half full-time. So you could have 20 part-time, maybe 10 full-time. Funding length ends July 1st. Well, this is that stipulation to keep it open for a while in case I don't know if we need it that long, so we'll keep it open. July 1st or when funds are depleted. Okay, awarded on a first-come, first basis. The use of funds. The funds can be used for any of the following purposes in order of priority: rent or mortgage payments for March, April, May, June, July. Utilities, electric, water, sewer, internet, for example, for March, April, May, June, July 2020. Inventory needed to restart a business. marketing, advertising efforts to promote business restart or to implement online sales presence. We have eliminated number 5, which is from the phase 1, which says any costs associated with rehiring or hiring new employees may not be used for payroll. Okay. Process. Applications will be accepted until 5 p.m. on what day is, what do you want to put in there? Or is that something we got to discuss?
We can discuss it the way, just looking at the way the calendar fell, this May 5th would give 2 weeks for people to apply. And
Yeah.
then you would have 1 week, like you did this time, to meet for your June 12th meeting.
May 5th?
You mean June 5th?
June 5th, sorry, I'm just looking at May. Yeah, June 5th, for June 12th action.
Okay.
Now, that's just looking at the
Do you
calendar.
think that's enough time, though? I mean,
Backing
maybe we should
into it.
push our meeting out a week and give them an extra week.
You could do that. What I was finding is that most people that night and the next day,
Oh, really?
I had most of the applications were in. The word was already on the street, and so people, I think, are knowing this. So it actually got harder to tell people, oh yeah, you gotta wait, we have to wait for the application to close in 3 weeks, then a week before we act.
Oh, that's
So I just offer that perspective for the
Yeah,
people
no,
who are
that's
ready
good.
for this are ready, because the intent was to leave it open as long as possible to capture as many people who could apply. And in some respects, it actually just made it a little longer process. So I'll leave that for your discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I think June 5th makes sense.
So that's 2 weeks with a holiday in there, but if I can turn this around quickly, it's gonna be the same process, which I do want to discuss with people when we get to that point, but they'd have 2 weeks to get them in hand. And then you'd have a week again, sooner than later, to start going through these. I don't know if a week is enough for you, because I know you got these late, with the mechanics of trying to get something for you to look at.
I'm on vacation June 6th, so I could be able to go through them,
I'll come. I don't have a problem. I mean, it's really, you're the one that's doing all the work. Do you have enough time to process this with all the calendar? I mean, if you need to push this out.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
based on phase 1, how many applications? You have a feeling for how many you would have on phase 2?
Well, I've already basically gotten 3 in of those who didn't qualify for the first, so I really don't have a sense of who may apply. I figure it'll be something similar, but it could be more. I just don't know what to base it on, because you're looking at a larger pool now. You had a very finite pool of retail and restaurant establishments that could have been eligible, so this is a
Well,
much bigger pool.
but it's gonna max out at 30.
30,
whatever.
yeah.
Right.
So-
30,
This time we got
your number's
29.
still 30, yes, that you can assist at $5,000.
Okay, well, we'll keep June 5th on as we have it here. And that application includes filling out this form, submitting all required attachments noted below with an notarized affidavit. Staff will compile applications for Economic Development Authority to act. Required information, the business will need to provide the following documents: proof of a 50% loss in sales. All claims of loss must be certified with a sworn affidavit. The following are methods from which you can choose to prove loss. However, this is new, the method must show a clear comparison of income before and after COVID-19 restrictions. A, profit and loss statement from February, March, and April. B, 90-day average of sales for months before March 15th, 2020 compared to March 2020 after COVID. Or previous year's sales for the months preceding March. Copy of, all this stays the same from phase 1, copy of active 2020 town and business license. Documentation explaining the intended use of funds. An affidavit is required certifying the funds are to be used for the purposes stated. If there is more than one owner, each owner must provide the sworn affidavit. Each business must provide a signed W-9 form. The grant will be reported by the town as income to the IRS. Applicant's name, business name, address, phone number, email. Was the business open as of September 1st, 2019. If no, the business is not eligible. I guess business open or has business license and would probably be a,
I think, yeah, that's
But,
how we're interpreting it.
yeah, I think so. Required documents, attachments, proof of 50% loss in sales, documentation explaining the intended use of funds, copy of active town and business license. Signed W-9 form, all claims of loss of and use of funds must be certified with a notarized sworn affidavit submitted with this application, which is attached. Application, it's not the same. Okay. That's it, right? Okay, no, there's another page. Applications will be accepted until 5 p.m. on June 5th. Postmarks will not be accepted. The Town Economic Development Authority will review complete applications and grants will be issued after their approval on a first come basis. There are several ways to submit an application. All required materials must be submitted at one time in one complete package. That's a new requirement, or at least a request. Electronically submit applications with attachments electronically via email, if under 5 megabytes, to Mary's email. If the application attachments exceed 5 megabytes, please provide a link to a digital file folder such as Google Drive or Dropbox to, again, Mary's email. This form may be filled online to Google Forms or Google account. For Google account holders, this requires a Google account. Or you can send a hard copy to the Town of Bedford, addressed to Mary. Here's a new item. Bring the package into the municipal building between the weekday hours of 8:30 to 5 p.m. There will be a box left at the front of the Economic Development Office marked for applications. If you need to submit those after hours, if the application and all attachments will fit in a normal size letter envelope, it can be submitted through the after hours drop box at the front entrance of the municipal building. For questions, call Mary. So that's it.
There's one item that I may want to add to the application, just the, asking them the number of employees. We did kind of have that in the first thing, but just to clearly say number of employees, full-time or part-time equivalent, just to spell that out. I didn't add that in this draft.
Yep. Sounds good.
So that would be additional required information.
That would be something they would physically have, or just actually have to fill out in the application, was to spell out the number of employees. Where right now it doesn't ask it, but it does require it.
Okay. Any more comments, discussions? Right now, we're looking at probably a change to the purpose, adding to exclusion of retail and restaurants since they were covered by phase 1. Add a number of employees line to the application. June 5th will be the application deadline. Those are the 3 that I caught. Anything else that I'm missing? Does anybody want to make a motion to vote on these changes and approve this document?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the document with the 3 changes outlined by the chairman, those being the purpose. We'll have an addition to the effect of other than restaurant and retail, which were included in phase 1, in keeping with the intent of the document town council, that we insert June 5th as the application deadline, that we include a line for number of employees on the affidavit in keeping with the new requirement.
Second? Anybody want a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. Let's do a roll call vote.
Yes,
Do we have
Mr.
some
Chairman.
discussion?
Oh, I thought we had.
Was a motion on the floor, correct?
Okay, okay, discussion of the motion.
Okay, just, I want to vote against the motion, just for the changes that we're making editorial changes that are not specifically made by the town council. I do not believe that we should be eliminating retail establishments in phase 2. It's maybe what they intended, but they should have said that. They didn't say it. Now, we're making that statement, and I don't think that we should be doing that. Also, the 50% reduction in sales, although that was specific in the council's motion and approved by the council. Still don't, but while we're voting on the document to make changes, then, but I'm gonna vote against it. Not that I don't think this is a good program. I think it's excellent. I appreciate town council giving the authority the chance to make these contributions to these businesses. I just really feel strongly that the retail business sector should remain open.
You know, I think my position is if you've been paying attention to all this stuff and you're a retail or a restaurant, you knew that, I think they knew that this was their only chance. I think it's, whether or not it's written properly in this document, it was kind of an oversight. But, you know, I would vote for either this motion, or I would vote for, if you wanted to eliminate it and leave it open, I don't have a problem with that either. But I just think as a business owner, you have a certain amount of responsibility to basically pay attention to what's going on, and I really think almost, I would say if you did a survey out there, I'd say 97% of the restaurants knew that phase 1 was for them and retail people. But I understand your position on that. I just listened to the intent. I know the intent of what town council, because I watched both of their meetings, and they really did want to do what I think the change is in line with what they wanted to do. So, Courtney, you have any comments? Do we want to? I don't want to take a vote unless we can pass it. So.
Well, originally, I mean, it was open to just restaurant and retail businesses, so they had first shot at whatever money was available.
I guess we can take a roll call vote and see where we are.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sensenig?
Aye.
Mr. Turner?
Aye.
Mr. Owen?
Nay.
Mrs. Welch?
Aye.
Mr. Holdren?
Aye.
And Mr. Buttram, Chairman.
Aye. So we passed the new phase 2 document with changes as noted. Any unfinished business that anybody would like to bring up? I think we're just trying right now, as an economic development authority, is trying to get through this COVID thing. I think we're going way above what I would have expected to really help the retail business of all the retail and all the small businesses here in town. I think going forward for the rest of the year, I want to get back into trying to work on some ideas on inviting new businesses, not just businesses, more bigger core businesses that manufacturing and that type of thing. Got some ideas floating around, but we're not going to really address those until after the next meeting, I think, just to get through all this stuff. So, because we started a lot of stuff that got just hanging out there. So,
That was the fun stuff.
I know, right? I want to get back into that mode. So anyway, if there's no other unfinished business, the next meeting will be June 12th. Everybody check their email. Have you got an email yet with the town?
I have.
Okay. Usually, that's one way to find whether or not we got it. There'll be a request by Kathy, or can you make it? And if we don't have a quorum, we'll eventually have to have a quorum, so we'll cancel
I'll be out June 12th.
Yeah. So, okay, if there's no other comments, we're adjourned.
Thank you.